This video is going to demonstrate how to make the multicolor motif from Coco's flower blanket. This is on page 2 of the pattern. For this motif, I'm using Caron Simply Soft yarn, which is a medium number 4 weight yarn, and I'm using an H8 5mm crochet hook. Start with a slip knot. To make a slip knot, I wrap the yarn around my 2 fingers so that the strands form an X. Hold the upper left part of the X with my thumb, insert my hook under that strand of the X, over that strand of the X, pull that strand through the hole, remove my fingers from the hole, pull on the yarn tails, and then pull on the working yarn to make the knot snug around the hook. Chain 4, slip stitch in the first chain to join and form a ring. There's the ring. Round 1 starts with chain 3 to equal a double crochet. Then we work 11 double crochet stitches into the ring. And the standard double crochet stitch is worked like this. Let me go through that again for you. Wrap the yarn over the hook, insert the hook into the ring, wrap the yarn over the hook, pull that loop through to make 3 loops on your hook, yarn over the hook, pull through 2 loops, yarn over the hook, pull through the last 2 loops. You now have 3 stitches. The chain 3 counts as the first stitch, 2, 3. Now for this particular kind of yarn, I like to make the double crochet stitches a little bit differently. I use a non-standard method, and the reason why is because the twist of the yarn is rather loose on this particular brand of yarn. It's lovely silky yarn, but it's not tightly woven, and it sometimes becomes easy to split the yarn. So what I do is the non-standard method, which is yarn over, and that's standard, insert the hook, and that's standard, but then I yarn under the hook, not over, but under. Yarn under the hook, pull it through. That makes 3 loops on the hook. Then I yarn over, which is standard, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2. The only thing about that whole process that's not standard is this part right here, where I yarn under before I pull that loop through. The purpose of doing it this way is that it puts just a little twist right back into the yarn as you pull that through with the yarn under. So for the rest of this demonstration, I'll be using the non-standard yarn under method. So we need 12 total stitches in the ring for round 1. I am working over the yarn tail, which will make it a little bit easier to weave it in when I'm finished with round 1. This is the multicolor motif, and therefore after round 1 I will cut the yarn and do an invisible join and use a new color for round 2. Okay, let's count and see how many stitches we have, and I'm counting the posts of the stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I've now accomplished 12 stitches. And you know what? I want to do that again. Let's just double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Perfect. Now, to finish the first round, because I'm ending with this color, I am going to do an invisible join, also called a needle join. So I'm cutting my yarn at about 6, 7, or 8 inches, whatever works for you. I pull the yarn out through the last stitch, grab my yarn needle, thread the yarn through the needle, and I'm going to use the needle to make my final joining stitch. And this is also rather non-standard, but it works for this pattern. Instead of joining in the top of the chain 3, I am joining in the first double crochet, the first real double crochet that I made. So I insert my hook front to back under the 2 loops at the top of the first double crochet, pull the yarn to the back, then insert the hook front to back under just the back loop only of the last stitch of the round, and then carefully adjust that loop that I just made. This is the strands of the loop we just made, these 2 right here. That's the strand we just made. So we need to adjust it so that it's the same size as the surrounding loops. To finish this, we turn it over on the back. And I'm going to put the needle under that strand of the last stitch. And then I'm coming over to get the back strand of the first double crochet. Then I go under one more strand to get both strands, the working strand and the tail, close to each other. Remove the hook. Then I do this, you don't have to, some people don't like to tie knots. I tie a knot in the 2 ends, a square knot, gently so that it doesn't pucker on the right side. And then, using the needle again, weave in the ends. It's always best to weave in the ends as you change colors. That way they're not in your way as you work with the next color, plus you've got them all done by the time you finish your motif. That's not very good. Let's try that again. Trying to hide this in the thickness of the stitches so that it doesn't show on the front. And then go back the other direction to make it even more secure. And I am splitting the strands. That will cause the tail to stay put better if you split the strands with it. And one more. Let's go the other direction on this one. Tail is kind of short, so this time what I'm going to do is insert the needle first and then thread the yarn into it. Pull it through without making it pucker. And snip the yarn close to the fabric. And there we have round one completely finished. For round two, let's use this beautiful turquoise color. Now there are several ways that you can start the next round. The pattern specifies starting with a slip stitch in any of the stitches. This is one way to accomplish that. Insert your hook front to back, grab the yarn without putting any knot in the yarn, and pull up a loop. Then chain 3, 1, 2, 3 to equal a double crochet. Then work 2 double crochet stitches in the same stitch. And remove your hook from the last stitch and insert it under 2 strands of the chain 3 of the top chain of the chain 3. Put the loop back on the hook, tighten it a little bit, and pull it through. Lost it. There we go. Pull it through. So now I've cinched all those stitches together, and to close the popcorn I chain 1 and then chain 2 and then continue on with the next popcorn. Let me pull that out and show you another perfectly acceptable way to start round 2. Some people like to start each new round with a new color with a slip knot already on the hook. Perfectly acceptable. Insert with the slip knot on your hook, insert the hook in any stitch under 2 strands, yarn over, pull up a loop. Make a slip knot. Then chain 3. And then continue on with 2 more double crochet stitches and then make your beginning popcorn. Now, let me show you another way that this can be done. Start with a slip knot on your hook and make a standing double crochet. So with the slip knot on the hook, yarn over, holding those 2 loops on the hook in position with your index finger. Insert your hook in the stitch, yarn over or yarn under, pull up a loop to make 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And you have started with a standing double crochet. Notice that with the knot on the hook and the standing double crochet, you have a loop that sticks out to the right or to the side of that stitch, which is fine. It's just something that you need to remember when you come around to finish your round, that extra loop there needs to be accounted for in the stitch count. Alright, now I'm going to take that out and show you another method. And this is also a standing double crochet, but rather than have a knot on your hook, you just grab the yarn and put 2 wraps around the hook. This one is a little fiddly, and I obviously don't use this very often, so I'm not adept at it, but some people are, and they do a really good job with it. So I've got 2 loops on the hook that I just did by winding them around and holding tightly. Insert the hook, yarn under, yarn over, pull through 2, and I'm holding on to that strand, yarn over, pull through 2. So that is a standing double crochet without a knot on the hook. And then you kind of still have to hold on to that tail while you are continuing to make more stitches. Now when you come around to finish that double crochet, there is no loop extending off to the right. So you need to take that into consideration when you work your final stitch. There's another way that you can start a new color. This is one of my favorite ways. I start with a slip knot on the hook and make a standing single crochet in the first stitch. Insert, yarn over, pull up a loop to make 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through 2. I now have a single crochet on the hook, and make another single crochet right on top of it by inserting under the leftmost strand, yarn over, pull up a loop to make 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through both loops, and now we have a single crochet on top of a single crochet, which is the height of a double crochet, and you've got this V at the top right there that you're going to work into when you come back around. And yet another way, instead of starting with a slip knot on the hook, just grab your yarn and hold on to it. Insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, chain 1, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, 2 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through 2, and now you have a single crochet. Insert under the left strand, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and you now have a stacked stitch with a single crochet on top of a single crochet. And this one does not have a knot that started out. That's quite a few ways that you can start a new color. You need to decide which one you like the best and go with that. Now let's just keep it the way it is for now, and we're going to continue with our beginning popcorn. So I'm making a second double crochet and a third double crochet. because in this pattern the popcorns consist of 3 double crochet stitches. Then I insert my hook back into the top of the first stitch, which in this case is a stacked stitch under 2 strands. Put the working loop back on the hook, pull that loop through the first stitch, chain 1 to close the stitch, and then chain 2 and start your next popcorn. In the next stitch, insert your hook, yarn under, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, 2 more double crochet stitches in the same stitch, remove the hook from the working loop. I kind of pull it up a little bit so I don't lose it. Insert the hook under 2 strands of the first of those 3 double crochet stitches. Put the loop back on the hook, tighten it down a little bit, pull that loop through the first stitch, chain 1 to close the popcorn, chain 2, and begin your next popcorn. Alright, I have almost finished round 2. Let's count to make sure we have the correct number of popcorns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 12 popcorns, and they're each separated by a chain 2 space. There's actually 3 chains because the first chain is the one that closes the popcorn stitch, and that is counted as part of the popcorn stitch. Now, I want to show you what I do when it comes time to joining the first and the last popcorn together. We will join with a needle join into the top of the first popcorn, which is right there in that little hole. Now, I've completed the last popcorn, which includes the final closing chain. If I make the normal 2 chains and then close with a needle join, I actually will have more space in this gap than I do in all the other ones. So what I do is I only chain 1 of the last 2, and I'll show you what I mean. So I'm taking the needle or the hook out of the loop, cutting the yarn about 6, 7, or 8 inches long, pulling the yarn out of the last stitch, putting the yarn in, threading it into a yarn needle, insert the needle front to back in that hole, which is the chain stitch that closed the first popcorn, pull the yarn through, and then I insert front to back under the back loop only of the last chain. Now, can you see that what I've done is I have made right there another stitch, which is the same number of stitches, chains, 1, 2, 3, between, as the ones that are between all the popcorns. So we've got the closing chain and the chain 2 between the popcorns. So that's why I did not work the chain 2 on this last round, on this last stitch. And now I will weave in my ends. And when you're weaving into a chain, it's a little bit trickier. Now if you want to, you can use a slip stitch to join, and that's perfectly fine too. Now, what I've done is I've gotten my yarn back to the lowest level of this round, which just so happens to be the same level as that strand is coming from the first stitch. So what I'm going to do is take those two, since they're close together, tie them in a knot, make it a gentle knot at first, then a snug knot, and then weave in these ends. Okay, I have put the needle underneath these bunches of stitches. Pull it gently through, pull the tail out a little bit farther, and then weave them back in, going the other direction under the bunches of stitches. Let's make sure I didn't, yeah, that's not good. Not quite so deep. That's better. And to be extra secure, I can even go back the other direction again. Snip the yarn close to the fabric. And do the same thing with this other end, going a different direction. Splitting the strands is a good thing to do when you are weaving in ends, because that gives more opportunity for those strands to be holding that tail in place. Okay, we have now accomplished rounds 1 and 2. Now to work round 3, and this time let's begin with a standing double crochet, which some people do with a slip knot on their hook and some people don't. I'm going to show you how I do this with a slip knot on the hook. Put the slip knot on the hook, yarn over, hold that in place with your index finger, insert your hook into any of the chain 2 spaces, yarn under, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. That's the standing double crochet. Now let's work a second double crochet, because we're making a corner now, and then we will do chain 2 and 2 more double crochet stitches in the same space. Okay, the first corner is made. and now let's work a set of 3 half double crochet stitches in the next chain 2 space. And the same thing in the next chain 2 space. 3 half double crochet stitches. So we have one corner and one side, and next comes another corner. Chain double crochet 2 times in the same space, chain 2, and double crochet 2 more times in the same space. So now we have 2 corners separated by one side. Let's make another side, set of 3 half double crochets, and same thing in the next chain 2 space. Completed, almost completed, round 3. Each corner is double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, and on the sides there are 2 sets of 3 half double crochet on each side. Now we are going to do an invisible join here. So I am cutting the yarn about 7 inches long, pulling the yarn out through the last stitch, inserting it, threading it into a yarn needle. Now this is important. We're going to do an invisible join, and we have to determine where we're going to insert our needle. Because of the fact that there is already a V-stitch coming out to the right of the post of the standing double crochet, if we join into that stitch, we're going to add a stitch to the stitch count unless we pull the stitch really tightly, which we can do. Let's see what it looks like if we do that. Front to back, and then front to back. Do you see how there's an extra V-stitch there because of the joining stitch that we did? We can compensate for that by pulling that stitch really tightly and then continuing on with weaving in the ends. That's one way. However, it does kind of seem bunchy. Now, in this case, it's not going to make too much difference because we're going to be working in the spaces between the sets of stitches on the next round. But if we were going to be working into the tops of every stitch when we work the next round, this can be confusing. So what I prefer to do instead is do my join into the top of the second stitch, not the standing stitch. So not here, but here. So what we're doing is, again, covering over and replacing the top of the stitch that's already there. Now we have the correct number of stitches across that gap. And when we work on the back to weave in the ends, this is something else that's crucial. There's an additional loop here that's hanging off the back. There are a couple of ways you can deal with that. You can just go ahead and thread your needle through it and basically kind of ignore it, just tie a knot and ignore it, and just go ahead and weave in your ends. Okay, ready for round 4. Let's try this one with a standing double crochet without a slip knot on the hook. So wrap it twice around the hook while holding on to it. Insert the hook in a corner. And make your standing double crochet. And there it is. Make a second double crochet, chain 2, and another double crochet, and another one. And the corner is now finished. The first corner is now finished. Now let's work in between the sets of stitches. In this space or gap, we're working 3 double crochet stitches. And in the next gap between sets, another 3 double crochet stitches. Three double crochet stitches again. So now we have a corner and 3 sets of 3 double crochet to make the side. Next corner, 2DC, chain 2, 2DC. And continue on around. Okay, I have almost finished with round 4. I have pulled the yarn out through the last stitch, threaded it into the yarn needle, and I'm ready to do an invisible join. And because I started with a knotless standing double crochet, I'm joining into the top of the non-standing, the second double crochet, because there isn't anything really to join to on the standing one. Front to back under 2 loops, pull the yarn, front to back under just the back loop only, adjust the tension of that loop that I just made so that it matches the surrounding stitches. Down through that one, down through that one, here's a good place to tie a knot. I know that some people absolutely will not put a knot in any kind of yarn work, and that's fine, but it's okay in crochet, in my opinion. And there you have your multicolor square. Steal my ball of yarn. You did steal my ball of yarn. What am I gonna do with you? You're such a sweet kitty. But I just made that ball of yarn for me. Oh, aren't you sweet? You're just trying to make friends with me. Yeah. Look at you. You're just such a sweet kitty. Such a nice girl. Look at you, you're so cute. You're irresistible. Yeah, irresistible kitty. Where are you taking that ball of yarn? Hmm? What do you think you're doing with that ball of yarn? You're too cute. Such a cute baby kitty. Yeah. You're such a nice girl. Pretty black baby. Yeah. Soft, furry, silky baby. Such a good girl. I'll take my yarn. Thank you.